After Invincible's events in the future, both Cecil and Invincible had become aware of another villain that was strong enough to be mentioned in the same breath as Doc Seismic, considering Doc Seismic was the same villain who was able to take out nearly every single hero in America and capture them. This is something to definitely keep in mind. This villain's name was Powerplex, however they only had gotten the name directly from Immortal. They had no idea who he was or what his abilities was. They also had to confirm that the multiverse did exist. Several marks were out there. Though it was information that slipped past Invincible's mind, it didn't slip past Cecil's. However, even though they only had gotten the name, they had no idea where to start, aside from one member of the GDA who did know exactly who Powerplex was. And this member was of course Powerplex himself, currently not known as that, instead known as Scott Duvall. And he was suddenly thankful that he got that information when he did. He still wanted revenge, of course, against Invincible, blaming him completely for the loss of his niece, as well as the loss of his sister. Still, one thing was clear was his original plan was more than likely not going to work, especially because of the fact that he had failed in the future. So he was going to need to think of something different, some way to kill Invincible and get revenge. It was especially problematic right now because of the fact that Invincible was still held under Cecil's protection. And considering everything they were doing right now, there was no way they were going to go against him. Powerplex was making a plan in order to steal the power amplifiers from the GDA, but he couldn't do so yet. Maybe it could be possible for him to replicate that technology. He still wanted to take Invincible head on. Currently he was out in the wasteland practicing with his powers, however that was when a portal opened up behind him. He immediately was on guard as sparks rose out from his body before the voice said, "Relax, I'm not here to hurt you." And the man who stepped out was Angstrom Levy, as he said, "In fact, I'm actually here to help you." See, the both of us have been wronged by Mark Grayson, by Invincible. And I've been looking for more people like me who hate him, and I know you do. Which that one caught Powerplex completely off guard, as he said, who are you? And a smile slowly began to creep onto Angstrom as he said, "Who I am doesn't matter. I'm a friend who doesn't like Invincible, who wants Invincible in every universe dead. Oh, right, I guess I shouldn't have said that part. I'm from the multiverse. And I'm here to help you out with something you want more than anything. Mark Grayson to be killed." Which is when a robot began to step out, one that was carrying a case. Inside here is some upgraded gear from another dimension that a version of you wore. Don't worry about that other version of you though, it's an older version of his armor, but it would more than definitely get the job done. Not just a version of the technology that you want to steal from the GDA or replicate, but it also is enhanced by reaniman technology, using the same things that they use in order to enhance their physical bodies. However, that's only part of what I have in store. The first thing we need to do though is set things back on track. A lot of the marks by this point would actually be separated from the GDA. For example, in another reality of the Doc Seismic situation, Invincible wasn't actually strong enough to beat Doc Seismic. He ended up getting captured and poisoned by one of the centipedes. As a result of that, they needed to be rescued by the reaniman. That led to a falling out between Cecil and Mark, resulting in Mark no longer being with the organization, and also going with a blue suit. But right now, their bond managed to stay the same. This Invincible was strong enough to be able to defeat Doc Seismic completely on his own. And he's only growing stronger and stronger. But I have a plan to separate him from the GDA. And once I do, you can eliminate him and fight him. Just wait for your signal, alright? I wish you the best of luck, Powerplex. And with that, Angstrom was preparing to go back for the portal, before we looked over to Powerplex and said, "Do you have any questions?" Powerplex looked up to him for a moment before shaking his head no. He couldn't help but admit he was being filled to the brim with excitement from this, finally the chance to get revenge on Invincible. Even more than that, from what he could tell from Angstrom, there might be a chance to kill more of them, as he said, "If possible, after we're done with this, can I join you on taking out the other Invincibles too?" Angstrom couldn't help but smile a bit more as he nodded and said, "Glad to have met you, my new business partner," before going through his dimension, leaving Powerplex here for now. However, after he left, a thought was now going into Powerplex's head. Was he strong enough to take Invincible on right now? He couldn't help but wonder that. After all, with this new gear, and him being a near-perfect counter to Invincible, he felt he might stand a pretty good chance. Still, this was something he was going to need to wait on for now. Inside of the other dimension, though, there was also somebody else who was waiting for Angstrom. The man was another variant of Invincible. one who had joined the Viltrumite Empire and one who was being completely silent. He was the second part of their plan. And if this worked, if they could get this Mark on their side as well for the Invincible War, Angstrom was certain of one thing: Mark most definitely would be dead. All it would take was ruining this Invincible's life to make him susceptible for the deal. Fortunately, he knew exactly how he was going to do it. Mark then would have returned home from his meeting with Cecil. While he was feeling a little bit better in comparison to before, he still wasn't feeling the best. After all, he had still killed somebody he had considered a friend. He was still unable to help somebody he had considered a friend. However, when he did arrive, he did see somebody else was here that he wasn't expecting. Alongside Debbie and Oliver, there was also Eve, here to enjoy dinner with them for now. And they looked over to Mark, immediately asking if he was okay. After all, he was home a lot later than they expected. And Mark told them, "It's a long story, but I am definitely feeling a lot better than I was before. Before and earlier in the day, I mean." And he told them all about everything. He knew he could trust his family, so he told them about the future he had gone to, the future where the Immortal had turned evil, the future where he apparently abandoned the Earth, and how he had to kill somebody for the first time, and the new ideology he was going to approach being a superhero with, which they were rather happy to hear that Mark got the right lesson from this. He didn't get the lesson that he needed to kill every single one of his opponents, but he got the lesson that he needed to make sure when he was going to kill someone, they were someone who needed to die. And with that, they all went to sleep for now, resting in order to prepare for the big days ahead of them. Little did Invincible know, that test of his morality was going to be coming much sooner than he thought. Out in space, a Viltrumite was coming to Earth, a little bit earlier than he was supposed to be, but after hearing the strength of the boy that was on the planet, one that might rival Nolan, and with the amount of time he had to grow, he couldn't help but be a little bit more excited and head to the planet a little bit faster than normal. That person, of course, being Conquest, the Viltrumite that Anissa had warned him about. By Conquest's estimation, he was going to be 2 weeks earlier than he thought initially, as he smiled a bit and said, "Hopefully you can be just as entertaining as your father is." At the same time, a massive portal began to open, opening high above the ocean. And out from the portal, a beast similar to that of the Depth Dweller rose out. However, this one was much larger, able to tower over skyscrapers. Cecil was of course able to immediately detect it. As he first contacted Atlantis, he thought that maybe Atlantis had something to do with it, but no, they had never once seen a Depth Dweller that big before. Based on their scans of the beast though, Invincible might be the only one capable of taking it on. Though Cecil knew that just in case, he was most certainly going to have to prepare the reaniman. He was just hoping that Invincible was going to be enough. Just in case as well, they did also call in the Immortal to act as backup, as Invincible, Immortal, and Adam Eve all arrived at the scene in order to fight against the Depth Dweller. Invincible in particular were having some pretty bad memories about this thing. He remembered its sound waves hurting like hell. But he also knew this was a wild animal, so he more than likely would have to put it down. It wasn't something that could turn good. Something that both the Immortal as well as Adam Eve were aware of. So they all knew they were going to have to be careful against a kaiju like this. For the Immortal, he felt this might be a chance to redeem himself. After all, he needed to be saved by Invincible from Doc Seismic. Adam Eve was in a similar boat, though this wasn't really pride for her. It was more just she wanted to fight alongside Invincible. There were also several jets from the GDA in preparation as well in order to offer some backup. Little did they know, inside of the water there was also a drone watching them, observing their every movements. Adam Eve would make the first move as she lifted up her hands and created several pink chains, wrapping them around the Depth Dweller's arms. Though she was straining herself even doing that, the beast was absolutely massive, so having to make chains like that size, that was a pain. Immortal and Invincible took their chances. Invincible did have to slow himself down a little bit so both him and the Immortal could both land a punch right on the Depth Dweller's face, causing the Depth Dweller to be pushed back by tens of feet. But then the Depth Dweller forcefully broke one of the chains and began to slam its hand towards both Invincible and the Immortal. And while Invincible was able to move out of the way at the last moment, Immortal wasn't, as Immortal was slammed deep into the ocean. A look of worry entered onto Invincible's face as he began to fly towards the ocean. At the same time, the Depth Dweller was preparing to launch another attack at Invincible, but before it could, it felt several bullets begin to land on its arm. Energy bullets that were utilized by the GDA. Still, they were only annoying it. They weren't causing any damage to the Depth Dweller whatsoever. As the Depth Dweller looked towards several jets beginning to fly around it, and it opened its mouth. It was about to try and fire out a sound attack right towards them, but before it could, it felt a large pillar land on its head. Adam Eve was defending them, giving the jets the necessary time in order to move out the way and scatter. Immortal coughed up a bit of water after being freed from the ocean thanks to Invincible. An immortal said, "Be careful. That thing's physical hits are no joke. It's stronger than dark seismic centipedes." Invincible nodded as he looked up towards the beast, trying to figure out a way to win this fight. He looked over to the immortal and asked, "Do you think you're still going to be capable of fighting or no?" And the immortal nodded as he said, "Come on, have more faith in me. One hit isn't going to be enough to take me out of this battle." And Invincible nodded as both him and the immortal began to fly towards it, Invincible near immediately picking up speed as he landed a punch right on the Depth Dweller's face, before following that up by slamming both of his hands right down onto its head. At the same time, Immortal flew right behind its spine and landed a hard punch right onto it. The Depth Dweller was able to immediately tell, though, between the two people attacking it, Invincible was the only threat to it. If it could kill Invincible, it would be able to kill everybody else. So after it restabilized its footing, it began to rapidly spin around, forcing the Immortal off of its back and slamming both of its claws right into Invincible. The raw amount of power that Invincible was just hit with was off the charts, surpassing that of the Hail Mary. That was something Invincible was able to handle, though it was mainly just made to be set up for another move. As well as Invincible was being sent backwards, the Depth Dweller opened its mouth and sent its sonic attack right towards Invincible, forcing Invincible to go through an immense amount of pain as he put both of his hands on his ears, before it was followed up by its claw slamming Invincible right down into the ocean. Adam Eve, the Immortal, and the Jets all began to rapid fire on the Depth Dweller, Immortal trying to punch its spine, Adam Eve launching several pillars towards it, while the Jets were firing, but it was focused, trying to kill Invincible. As Invincible felt each claw strike land right on its body, every single last one of them, and a memory came back to his head. That memory of Omniman beating him into that mountain, letting hit after hit, punch after punch on him. As a focus and rage entered into his eyes, he would have yelled if it wasn't for the fact he was stuck underwater right now. He overcame the pain that he was currently feeling, as Invincible clapped his hands together, sending a shockwave so massive that it forced the Depth Dweller to be forced out of the water, sending it tens, no hundreds of meters high up into the air. The shockwave and wave of water were enough to send the helicopters, Adam Eve, and even Immortal away, before he began to rocket right towards the Depth Dweller, flying at speeds that the GDA had never tracked him at, as he landed another punch right onto the Depth Dweller's face, this time sending it even higher up into the sky. And right as he was about to try and land another punch on it, the Depth Dweller opened its mouth again, and sent another one of those sound attacks right towards Invincible. And while it slowed him down, he was still pushing, before the Depth Dweller opened its mouth even further, and went all out, sending a full sound wave right towards him, disorienting Invincible for just long enough for the Depth Dweller to use its claw to grab onto Invincible as they were both falling down towards the earth again. And thanks to disorientation, there wasn't anything Invincible could do, as he was slammed down hard back into the ocean, causing him to cough up quite a bit of blood, and disorienting him in the process. However, right as the Depth Dweller was about to attempt to land another blow onto Invincible, several sounds of the teleporter began to go off, as 5 newly upgraded reaniman appeared right in front of them, all of them landing a blow right onto the Depth Dweller's face at once. But they had a new plating, one that was more orange in color, the same color as the centipedes that Doc Seismic were utilizing. Invincible's eyes widened as he realized what he was looking at. The reaniman, what are they doing here? How did the teleporter? In his mind, he realized rather fast exactly what was happening. The GDA, they were using DA Sinclair. But he focused for a moment. The Depth Dweller was still the much greater threat up to this point, and he was going to be necessary to taking it out. Whatever the reason why the reaniman were still here, whatever the reason why DA Sinclair was working with Cecil could wait. There was also the fact that he couldn't ignore, the fact he would have been dead if the reaniman hadn't arrived. Still, he wasn't happy to see them, as he flew out from the ocean and prepared himself as well. And as Invincible began to fly up from the water, he saw several pods begin to make their way over. 10 of them all at once, each of them containing reaniman. The 5 of them that were already here began to rapidly attack the Depth Dweller, landing several blows. Each and every single one of the blows that they landed were causing some small amount of damage onto it. But Invincible focused as he had a memory back to Anissa, how Anissa had handled the kaiju, by flying right through its brain at full speed. So he focused, flying higher and higher into the sky while at the same time the reaniman were stalling, keeping it distracted for now, before he accelerated further and further, getting faster and faster before he accelerated to full speed and went right through the brain of the Depth Dweller, killing it in a singular shot. This normally would have been a lot more difficult if it wasn't for all the damage done to its head specifically up to this point, but still, the beast had now fallen. And before Adam, Eve, or the Immortal could say anything, Invincible looked towards the direction of where the Pentagon was. Invincible needed to have another talk with Cecil, and he immediately took off, flying right towards that direction. As he said, "Cecil, I'm coming over to the base. We need to talk now." Knowing Cecil was still listening, Angstrom was watching through that with a smirk on his face. He had to admit he was impressed that it worked. Maybe he should visit that dimension more often. That dimension was an intriguing one. It was one where Atlantis was a lot more involved with the surface development in comparison to normal, leading to several of the sea creatures mutating in different ways. But that wasn't important for now. He then also sent a message over to Powerplex as he said, "It's almost time. Just wait for the after effects of this meeting." Powerplex smirked as he said, "Good, I'll get myself ready." Invincible landed at the Pentagon and walked inside, not really destroying anything on his way in, as he flew towards Cecil's office. Fortunately, Cecil was already standing outside of his office waiting for him. This was a gamble that Cecil was about to take, but he felt it could be worth it, especially with what had just happened in the future. Maybe talking could actually work. As Invincible asked him, "How long? How long has D.A. Sinclair been working with you, and what other criminals do you have that work under you?" Cecil sighed as he then said, "I took him in the moment you defeated him. But with how weak our planet is in comparison to the Viltrumites, and with D.A. Sinclair being able to create the reaniman, one of the only few things that were able to rival a Viltrumite that were on the planet, we needed that technology. But more than that, I saw a chance to redeem somebody. I saw a chance to make somebody better. I'm not happy about having to work with that scumbag, don't get me wrong. But we needed as much backup as we can. We're still behind in comparison to the Viltrumite Empire, especially with what is to come in the future, with what Anissa warned us about. I have a lot of faith in you, kid, don't get me wrong, but I know better than to have faith in just one thing and make sure it works." And Invincible closed his fist for a moment. He was tempted to lash out. He was angry, but at the same time, this was somebody who was given a chance at redemption, a chance to become better, and a chance to use his talents for the better. A judgment that he was going to have to learn, something that Cecil was already skilled at doing. But then he thought more about it as he said, "How can you forgive someone like that? He didn't just kill people, he forcefully kidnapped them and turned them into monsters." And Cecil shook his head as he said, "I think you misunderstand. I'm not forgiving him. I'm giving him a chance to do something better with his talents. The people we have now that are reaniman are soldiers of the GDA that have passed on, soldiers of the military that want to be able to give their people one last fight, and now we're able to give them that. I'm still holding him accountable for his crimes, I'm just making sure they can be repaid." As Invincible took a breath in and a breath out, right now he was on a unique path. He was trying to figure out if his judgment was right. He was trying to figure out if this was something he could agree with Cecil on. He wasn't going to attack Cecil, but at the same time, he didn't know. He looked conflicted. As he told him, "Please leave me alone for a bit. I need to think." Cecil opened his mouth about to say something before closing it as he nodded. And Invincible flew out. Didn't go as good as he could have hoped, but did certainly go better than he was expecting. The worst way this could have gone was Invincible being turned to an enemy. However, Cecil did decide that he was going to respect this for now. He was still going to observe Invincible, but he knew talking to him wasn't going to work either. Though the one who was most surprised at this all was Angstrom. He was expecting a massive fallout between the two of them, not this. However, the steps had at least been laid for now. He felt there was a good chance right now that Powerplex might still be effective, especially because of his connection to the GDA. So, he decided to send the signal over to Powerplex.